Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Buck Brief. We're joined by Juliana Mercer. She is a Marine Corps veteran and the Director of Public Advocacy for Healing Breakthrough, which she'll tell us about here. Has to do with veterans and PTSD and treatment. Juliana, thanks for being here, first of all. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. So great to be here, Buck.
All right, let's start with this. You were in the Marine Corps. Now you're doing work to help fellow veterans through this organization, Healing Breakthrough. What is this entity? What does it do? What do you focus on?
So Healing Breakthrough has a mission to get MDMA-assisted therapy into the VA system for all veterans that can benefit from it. And by benefit from it, it means heal and solve their PTSD. MDMA just received their new drug application from the FDA with final results of 71% efficacy in eliminating a PTSD diagnosis. And of those that didn't get completely eliminate their diagnosis, they had an 86% reduction in symptoms. When you compare that to our current gold standards, where we're only seeing a 30% reduction in symptoms, you can see why this is something that's really exciting, and we want to make sure we get into the hands of veterans.
So if you could walk me through this a little bit. MDMA, this is like ecstasy is what people usually call it, right? I mean, as the street drug name. So go ahead.
Correct. So there is MDMA found in ecstasy, but the pharmaceutical that has been used for these clinical trials and that is going to be FDA approved is very different from the street drug. It's unadulterated, and it's not mixed with anything that you would find on the streets.
No, sure, different. I'm just wondering, how did this come about? Like take me back to the beginning here. I mean, I have heard, and you're hearing more and more about this. People are talking about ayahuasca in the veteran community. I have friends, particularly from the special operations side, who have taken, who have gone on these, gone to these sort of special medical clinics. Some of them are outside of the U.S., and they take drugs that are still not even. It's not just that they're not given here; they're still technically illegal here. And some of them have had very powerful results, and they're friends of mine. So I know something's going on here, right? I mean, they're telling me they took ayahuasca. There's another one. I'm forgetting the name. Which starts with an R, I think. Yes. Ibogaine. Thank you. Ibogaine. Like, where does this research, where did this start? How did we get into this realm where, I mean, you're doing public advocacy for this now. How did anyone figure out that some of these drugs, I think Ibogaine comes from like a toad venom, basically, that is distilled. Is that right? Or something like that?
So one of these medications, that's 5-MeO-DMT, comes from the toad venom. Ibogaine comes from an African root.
Okay.
So you're seeing and hearing a lot of folks leaving the country, going to get healing through these therapies in places where it's not illegal. I personally was able to experience one of these therapies, one of the breakthrough therapies outside of the US, and was able to see almost 20 years of trauma and grief just completely leave my body overnight. And with the help of talk therapy, was able to really get to the root cause of my issues and was able to heal. And that is kind of what got me on the track of doing this advocacy, learning about these modalities. So back to MDMA, which is the one that's going to be FDA approved. It was formulated in 1912 by Merck, and it was being used for talk therapy very successfully, but it did leak out into the rave scene and was scheduled by the DEA in the mid 80s. And so that effective use was our healthcare providers were no longer able to use it. And so for the last 30 years, there's been an organization called MAPS, now Lycos, that has been making sure that the research doesn't get lost. So it's taken 30 years for them to get this through the FDA process. And we just saw the new drug application get accepted, and we're anticipating FDA approval for MDMA-assisted therapy in August of this year.
Wow. This is fascinating stuff. I have so many questions. One of them is, how is the medical community reacting to this so far, right? Because these are, we've always known, like when it comes to opiates, for example, that it's been known for a very long time, I mean, centuries, if not millennia, that these things can be used for pain management, right? Also highly addictive and can be dangerous. But people generally don't think of some of these other drugs, and specifically MDMA, as something that is therapeutic. It's so ingrained in the public mind. This is as you said, a party drug, a rave drug, that this could help treat and or even possibly in some cases, not all, but some, cure veterans of extreme PTSD that they have been dealing with as a result of the wars we've been fighting abroad. That's a lot, I think, for people to take in. How is the medical community reacting? Are there big advocates for it? Are they scared they don't want to go near it because the stuff is technically illegal still?
Yeah, so I think the medical community and the community at large has been starting to be educated on the great potential of these novel treatments. They're also destigmatizing through the veteran voices that you're hearing. So veterans are coming home and they're touching their communities with these voices and saying, after 15 years of complex chronic PTSD, this one illegal medication that I had to leave the country for gave me 20 years worth of therapy. And so the veteran voice is helping to destigmatize. We have folks inside of the VA at the top and the bottom that are working to study these substances. They're being studied at all of our higher ed institutions, Harvard, Yale, Johns Hopkins is also studying these. So there's been a lot more science behind it and a lot more education happening. So people are starting to understand the potential use of these. And a lot of the science is also showing us that there is minimal to little harm when you use these substances correctly with the help of a mental health care provider.
Let me ask you more about that in a second, but just a word from our sponsor here, the Oxford Gold Group. A lot of people are still on the fence about whether they should own precious metals, and I just think it's a smart thing to diversify and to take action today to prepare for an uncertain future. Look, inflation's ticking up again. Look at gold over the last 30 years. Has it gone up? Has it gone down? The answer is very straightforward. Gold is something you want to have on hand as part of your overall portfolio. You can use it as a tangible currency in case you have to bug out for some reason. Portfolio diversification, a hedge against inflation. It's also a store of value because historically gold increases over time. So if you're paying attention to global events, particularly global economic events, now is the time to have some gold and silver on hand. Nobody can predict the future, but you don't want to put your head in the sand either. The Oxford Gold Group, those are the pros I trust. That's who I've bought my gold and silver from for years. They make owning gold and silver easy and simple to understand. Call the Oxford Gold Group right now. You may qualify for up to $10,000 in free precious metals. They'll give you details. Call them, 833-995-GOLD, 833-995-GOLD. That's 833-995-GOLD. Juliana, in terms of the risks and I guess, what do the naysayers, are there naysayers about this? Are there people who try to just dismiss this out of hand? Do they say it's dangerous? I mean, treating anybody, not just veterans, with MDMA, I'm sure there has to be some bureaucratic or institutional pushback, or is there?
There is, but it's minimal. I'm on the Hill every day talking to our legislators, and when I'm able to explain to them the science behind this, and I'm able to show them that this is a treatment that has medical value, it's a lot easier for them to wrap their heads around it. We're still fighting the stigma of the 60s and 70s, the war on drugs, and our DEA telling us that these are Schedule I substances, which means they hold no medical value. And so we're finding out now that that is not true. And through the science and research, we're able to start to help people change their minds about the stories that we were told that these had no medical use.
Is there any change in legislation that may be coming that would address the legality of this for medicinal use? I mean, you've seen something of a progression like that over the course of many years with marijuana, and there used to be a lot of talk, I think like 20 years ago now, about medicinal marijuana for specifically glaucoma and some other conditions, and some of the studies for it that were in support of it. Now there's, marijuana has also just gone legal in a lot of places at the state level. Is there an interest in changing the law so that veterans have, just the fact that they have to leave the country to get this therapy? And I know it's not just MDMA. We mentioned Ibogaine and some of the others, ayahuasca. that seems to be an impediment that's unnecessary given the results that are already being seen.
So there's a couple things happening. The Breakthrough Therapies Act is looking to reschedule Schedule 1 substances to Schedule 2 when the FDA deems them a breakthrough therapy. So breakthrough therapy designation means that there's great promise through this medication, and the FDA will fast track it through the FDA process. When it's a Schedule 1 substance, there's a lot of barriers to research. MDMA, for example, received breakthrough therapy status in 2017, and it's been almost 8 years until we're going to see it actually be FDA approved. So because of those barriers to studying Schedule 1 substances, we're seeing a pause in how quickly we can get these medications approved and studied. So the Breakthrough Therapies Act is hoping to correct that so it's easier to study substances when they get rescheduled and deemed a breakthrough therapy. The other thing that we're doing is trying to ensure that the VA is ready to roll out MDMA-assisted therapy in the VA system as soon as MDMA is FDA approved. You mentioned some of these other compounds. They show great promise, and they're in various parts of the research funnel. I think there's over 500 different psychedelic compounds that are being studied. And it's not just for mental health conditions, it's also for pain management, for Alzheimer's. There's a lot of different ways that these modalities can be potentially helpful to a lot of the things that we've been lacking answers for.
You mentioned a piece of legislation. Where does that stand right now on the Hill? And are you getting, veterans issues is one of the few areas. I mean, we're really just focusing on your area and your expertise here. In my day job, you could say, Juliana, I spend a lot of time thinking about politics, right? Veterans issues, one of the few areas where you can get a lot of bipartisan consensus, generally speaking. Are you seeing that on this issue? Are both sides equally willing to consider some of these new breakthrough therapies, even though there's this kind of public stigma about some of these substances? Let's be honest. I mean, what's the temperature like on the Hill?
I think it's the most bipartisan issue on the Hill. Our legislators have been, like myself, trying to find solutions to the veteran suicide epidemic. And we've been banging our heads against the wall because we haven't had any solution that actually works. So when I walk into their offices and I show them a solution that 2/3 of those that go through this treatment no longer qualify for a PTSD diagnosis, this is the answer that they've been looking for as well. And so I'm finding very little resistance to getting support for ensuring that MDMA-assisted therapy is available in the VA system.
Yeah, and I think it's so important for a lot of the people listening or watching now know people, or maybe they themselves have PTSD. And if you told any of them, and I know this from talking to them about it over the course of many years now, that they had a 2 in 100 chance of really getting a hold of it, as long as it wasn't extremely dangerous or something for them, they would take that, right? I mean, they would, because some of them haven't found a lot of success with cognitive therapy alone. Some of them still struggle with the flashbacks and things like that. So when you're talking about a 2 out of 3 shot, I think that just goes to show how promising this is and what a breakthrough this could be. Just taking a moment here for the Tunnel to Towers Foundation, an organization that does a tremendous amount of good, and make sure that we never forget. This means never forgetting 9/11, never forgetting the soldiers and first responders who risked their lives and bodies for our country and communities. The foundation is committed to helping these heroes and their families. Heroes like retired Air Force Lieutenant Michael Cardos. Lieutenant Colonel Cardos served his country for 20 years and received numerous commendations, including a Bronze Star. During his time overseas, he was exposed to toxic burn pits. 18 hours after being diagnosed with service-related cancer, he passed away. Tunnel to Towers paid off the mortgage on his family's home, enabling his widow and their 6 children to stay in that home, removing that financial burden. The foundation helps Gold Star families and the families of fallen first responders, as well as catastrophically injured heroes and homeless veterans. Help families like the Cardos. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers at T2T.org. That's T, the number 2T.org. I donate every month. It's really easy. You can set it up. It's recurring. please, team, join me in this one, T2T.org. Juliana, thank you for telling us all about this. I know you're on the Hill and you're trying to move the ball forward with legislation. For anybody who's interested either in just learning more or also perhaps helping out or maybe finding some of the resources that could be available to them if they themselves have service-related PTSD, where can people go and how can they get involved?
Healingbreakthrough.org for more information. If you're interested in the clinical trials, it's clinicaltrials.gov. And if you're a veteran that is looking to connect with these therapies, heroicheartsproject.org.
All right, there we go. Juliana, thank you again for your service and your time today. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Buck. Great talking to you.
Thank you.